Pod. Welcome back to another episode of Say Who Say Pod. He's
Happy
Danny
New
O'Neil in the
Year!
sports coat. I'm Christian Caple. It's 2026. The Huskies got a punter, Danny.
I was going to start with that very line myself. How pumped are you about the second team all Big West punter coming to town, baby?
Would you believe, before about 5:20 p.m. last night, I fully expected us to spend a significant portion of this show discussing the signing of senior punter Hunter Green, who's, by the way, the Huskies didn't just get a punter. They got a really good punter. That would have been the headline.
I had a nickname come up. I was going to call him the punt god.
Well, there you
punt
go.
God.
I like Hunter the punter as well. You wish, those listening, we were here to talk about Hunter Green, certainly. Obviously, by now you are well aware that DeMond Williams Jr. has announced his intent to enter the transfer portal. Whether his name actually winds up getting submitted into the transfer portal by the school is another matter, according to a couple national media members, Pete Nakos and Ross Dellinger. I don't think they're going to do that. So we'll get into all of the various ramifications and what that could mean both for Williams and for the school. Obviously, you've probably seen reports, and I've been told myself that Washington is looking into any legal avenues it might be able to take to enforce what it says is a binding revenue share contract that DeMond Williams Jr. signed now 5 days ago, that was announced officially by the school on its Instagram page 5 days ago. How does this, I read your column right before we started, which I would recommend if you're not subscribed to the Dang Apostrophe, go ahead and do so. DannyO'Neil.com. Is it DannyO'Neil.com?
Yes.
Yes. You seem fairly zen about it. I can't tell if you're zen or if it's nihilism with regard to college football at this point.
There's very little zen. There's a lot of nihilism. I wrote a stream of conscious. I decided I'm going to try a couple new things this year. And one of them, the idea that I came up for is to have a stream of consciousness column where I just type. I don't delete. And the idea is sort of unfiltered, unrefined flow of what I'm thinking rather than restructuring. We'll see. I have a poll on there asking what people think about it. And the last selection was, it's not any worse than the stuff that usually appears here. To see if people like it. I don't want to be mad at DeMond Williams. I've always had an approach that I don't want to be mad at a college athlete for where they choose to go to school to play sports. At the same time, this really sucks. And I wouldn't say that anybody's wrong to be really mad at DeMond Williams, both for the way the decision was made, like the sequence of events, even how it was announced. It also reflects the change of guys are getting paid now. This is certainly an example of the wart that exists in college football right now. And it magnifies it and makes it clear how messed up the sport or structureless the sport is at a point when all this money is not just being pumped into the sport, but being distributed to the players. And ultimately, I just think that this is an example, a glaring example of a very bad structure that exists within the sport right now. And this might be a certain amount of either denial or just, I don't want to be mad at a 20-year-old kid for making a decision about where he thinks it's best for him to play college football. But this stretches that to its very limit, I guess is the way of saying it.
You know who's not entering the transfer portal, Danny?
Who's not entering the transfer portal?
Our good friends at Chuck Olson Kia, sponsor of today's show and every episode of Say Who Say Pod. Chuck Olson Kia in Shoreline. Locally owned and operated since 1964, family owned and operated by a family of University of Washington graduates with a friendly, low-pressure sales staff and a competitively priced selection of vehicles. We hope you'll make Chuck Olson Kia your next vehicle buying destination. If you do, when you do, ask for our guy Henry Olson Ask Henry what he thinks about DeMond Williams Jr. transferring, and then tell him that Say Who Say Pod sent you. Today's episode of Say Who Say Pod also brought to you by our friends at Husky Mobile. Husky Mobile is partnered directly with the University of Washington to offer affordable phone plans for the Husky community, starting at just $20 a month with a portion of each bill going back to help fund UW athletics. Subscribers can also enjoy game day perks like fast pass lanes, seat upgrades, and giveaways, all while on T-Mobile's nationwide 5G network. Use code ONMontlake at checkout. That's code ONMontlake at checkout to get a month free when transferring your number. Thanks again to Husky Mobile for supporting today's show. I do think, and you used the term moral high ground, I think that's a good way to put it, that no school is ever going to be thrilled with its starting quarterback going in the portal. Certainly nobody's ever going to be thrilled with the manner of announcement, the timing of the announcement. That's a whole other matter. But that the fact he had, in this new era of revenue sharing and athletes signing contracts with schools, that he had signed it, that the school had announced it. And I'll tell you, my reaction when I saw it was Pete Thamel's report that like DeMond Williams has agreed, to a new deal to return to Washington in 2026 was like, oh, was that something that we were supposed to keep an eye out for? Like, I didn't
exactly
realize that
too.
like you were going to get this procession of, and Washington's not the only school, but this procession of re-signing announcements. I wonder if that practice will stop now, since it may or may not even mean anything to put pen to paper.
Yeah.
That's one of the ramifications that I am curious about, because like a natural question when this happens is, look, Washington can weather this. There are quarterbacks available who could fit into the offense, who have college experience, if that's the route they choose to go. I named a few of them in my quick reaction story at onmontlake.com. I might get into that in a little bit more depth in the future. If they retain everybody else, this doesn't have to be like a season-destroying development. It's not good, and they're not guaranteed to come out the other side on the plus side. That's not what I'm suggesting. The route where that doesn't happen, the path where that doesn't happen, is if a number of your skill players, your offensive players, your people who you have sold a vision that very much included DeMond Williams Jr. being the quarterback at Washington. I mean, they have structured the program around DeMond Williams Jr. being their starting quarterback
for 2 years going into this year.
Yeah.
And that's
so the worry is, do those guys hit the portal? Do those guys now look elsewhere? And I wonder, does the immediate threat of legal action toward a player who has signed a revenue share agreement to return next year have a chilling effect on guys who are similarly situated, who are on that list, who have all those Instagram graphics on Washington's account right now as having re-signed? Would any of them think, gosh, all things being equal, I kind of would like to see what the market is for me, maybe at a program that has an established starter, and I want to get away from the uncertainty here, but they're going after DeMond, they'll probably go after me too.
I'm less worried about that, and that might turn out to be naive. I do think that Washington should pursue litigation, whether that's against LSU or actually to recoup whatever financial compensation they think they should get from DeMond Williams. And the reason I feel that is not that I think DeMond needs to be punished, but I do think that agreements that players sign need to mean something. I do believe that. Just like a letter of intent used to mean something, I think that signing an agreement to receive revenue share that should mean something. In my experience, when these sort of things happen, most players react with, hey, I don't hold it against him personally. You have to look out for yourself. But it kind of redoubles their commitment to where they are. It's not the same as when a coach leaves and everybody's like, well, if he's going, that might turn out to be naive. But in the short term, I do think trying to sort of litigate the contract is a good step for Washington, if only to establish boundaries. It's very clear to me that the remedy for this is not going to be Damon Williams is not going to play for the University of Washington next year. Like that's not an outcome that I could foresee at all from any of this, whether Washington sues him or any step. And I can't even imagine a situation where Damon would come back 24 hours later and say, you know what, I screwed up. I shouldn't have done it. I think that this bell being rung and the way it was rung, it's done. And now we'll see the short-term emotional reaction, not just among the team, but among Washington's fans and how it feels. And then sort of the question of long-term structural change, because right now everybody feels bad for Washington. Like the reaction locally is people are furious at DeMond. And the reaction nationally is that this is exhibit A for why college football is messed up. Like Washington is coming out looking like the wronged party here.
Yeah, it's I think that when John Mateer leaves Washington State and at least does the courtesy of sending a group text message to his teammates saying, hey, sorry, boys, but I can't turn down this kind of money. I got to go take one of these offers. It's been fun. And I think that the reporting was that Wazoo was right around $1 million with its offer, which is pretty significant investment. It probably took pretty significant effort to get that together. And then, the numbers being thrown out for Oklahoma, I think Miami was after him, were more like in the 3 million plus range. So that's a little bit different percentage wise. I think that it was just speaking in terms of like the public perception and does the sympathy lie with the school or with the player? I think if you're talking about a difference of like 4-ish million and 5 to 6 million, and again, these are, we don't know concrete numbers. What I'd heard for Damon Williams Jr. at Washington was that all in, and I don't believe this is all revenue share, which is a different discussion entirely, but that all in, I think he was guaranteed upwards of 4 with incentives that could have pushed it more like 5. So if it's a difference between 6 million and 5 million, that's where I think even in a very pro player environment in the national media, the sympathy shifts from the player to the school, where it's like if you're leaving now, he could be getting more than that. Maybe it's 7 million. Maybe it's he's leaving 4 for 6, or he's leaving 5 for 7. Who knows? I don't know that you've seen ever a quarterback of Damon Williams Jr.'s, let's call it standing, right? A 1 year plus starter playing for the coach who recruited him out of high school, who has been made, at least to our knowledge, probably one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the country already, at a program that has structured itself around him, a program at which he is the center of gravity, blindside his school by leaving like this. So it's unlike, doesn't seem like anything's unprecedented anymore. It doesn't seem like we should be surprised by anything anymore, but it really is unlike anything we've experienced in college football in the portal era. You just the other day, Nebraska got a commitment from a transfer quarterback who changed his mind and flipped to another school.
Mm-hmm.
Like that happens. You have guys sign, obviously, you've still got the court case pending with Xavier Lucas, the cornerback who transferred from Wisconsin to Miami, and Wisconsin sued, saying, no, you signed a revenue share agreement. But what happened with that, right? He played playing
the whole
for
season.
Miami,
yeah,
and the courts are still sorting it out. So I feel like with this coach hiring cycle, Washington fans got to a point where if Jed Fish had left, and it's not over, NFL jobs, blah, 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 like never say never, the reaction would not have been anywhere near what it was when Kalen DeBoer left for Alabama. I think that people had resigned themselves to the fact that, look, this is the world we're in now. We talked about it. Like Kalen DeBoer's departure snapped something. I don't think Jed Fish leaving Washington after 2 years would have put fans in that same mindset that we saw in January of 2024 when DeBoer left of, I can't do this anymore. This fundamentally changes my love for the sport. I can't invest emotionally in this thing anymore. I'm done. And whether those people stay done or not might be a different matter. This does. This feels very similar. I've had new subscriptions too, so nobody cry for me. But I've had a few cancellations so far, like I did when DeBoer left, of people saying, "Hey, love you, man, but I can't do this anymore. I can't do this to myself anymore. This sport is too difficult for me to follow." This is the kind of move that I think really sucks the joy for people, some people, out of following college football. For others, it's, a little more of a nihilistic view, and hey, we should have given up on the idea of loyalty a long time ago, and shame on you if this ruins your day.
I definitely don't feel that way. Like, my nihilism doesn't go to that point where, hey, you should just accept that this is the way it's going to be, because I don't think it's always this way. I think that there are specific points in time where you will see people make decisions that tell you that what means something to you about college football is not the same thing what means something for them, that you have, whether it's different values or the sport means different things. I do think it's similar to Kalen DeBoer's departure. The difference, and so from an observer standpoint, and I'm not talking from a Washington fan standpoint, from an observer standpoint, it's interesting to me that the national reaction to Damon Williams leaving Washington is, oh, Washington got hosed. This shows how rotten the sport is. And the national reaction when Kalen DeBoer left was, that's just the way the world works. You didn't expect him to stay in Seattle all that long, did you? Because I think they're very similar. Damon's was less polished and more like, he did concrete, demonstrable things to anger people more. Like, he wasn't as polite about it. It was poorly timed and executed. If you're going to do it, don't sign the agreement. If you're going to announce it, don't send the announcement, post the announcement online. Text your teammates. Certainly don't post the announcement online while there is a memorial underway for an athlete at the school that you are going to. But that at the core, it's the same thing. DeBoer went to Alabama because that gave him an opportunity to have a higher caliber recruiting class, better athletes, and a better chance at a national championship. I don't think this is just because Damon Williams can get more money at LSU. I believe it's because he's been sold on the idea that you can win a Heisman Trophy here, and you won't be able to do that. You can become Jaden Daniels here in a way that you wouldn't be able to there. And in that way, I think they're fairly similar. I'm someone who's admittedly petty about DeBoer's departure and really enjoyed watching his team lose by 35 points in the Rose Bowl because I knew how Alabama fans would react to that. And so it's, from that observational standpoint, it's interesting that I'm not taking the same approach with DeMond. I'm certainly not rooting for him at wherever he ends up, especially if it's LSU, but I'm trying to stop short of like, hey, I want to see him struggle. I also think that for the program, this is much easier to bounce back from than what happened with DeBoer. DeBoer was a devastating blow to the program. I'd still make the trade of having him for 2 years and making that run, but what happened after he left was devastating. This will not be as devastating for the program.
I'm trying to get my mind around to whether, because, if this is a straight up poaching, again, like, it's still early. We don't know all the details around what Damon's thinking, what happened with his representation. That's a whole other conversation. The gut reaction is, oh, well, this is why third-party NIL is so important. This is why Jed Fish still wants Washington to have a collective on top of their revenue share. This is why that supplemental pay, right? I wrote a column not long ago centering Lane Kiffin in particular, who talked openly about how, like, that's the most important factor now for whether a job is a good job. But I don't know if I can get all the way there knowing the commitment that Washington had made to Damon Williams Jr. If guaranteed upwards of potentially $5 million for your junior starting quarterback, your 19-year-old starting quarterback is not enough. Just because there's a very small handful of schools out there who are willing to go above and beyond that to get a guy to potentially breach a contract to come play for them, is that cause for like an overhaul to your NIL operation? It did Damon Williams even give Washington the opportunity to come back and match a number or come back over the top? Maybe, but it kind of seems like they were blindsided by this. So I don't know. Is it just the money, or is it's enough more money combined with all the things you just talked about? It's LSU, it's Lane Kiffin, the platform, the potential in the SEC and at a blue blood and all those sort of things.
It's not Washington's program that needs to up its game. It's the system that needs to be reformed. If we're going to switch into sort of the more forward-looking and taking the emotion out of it, the answer to this is not, we need a bigger gun. We need a bigger hammer. We need a war chest. Because if that's the direction this sport's going, A, Washington's not going to win that. And B, you're going to be led by the most insane institutions over the cliff. LSU is an insanely dysfunctional place, specifically at this point in time. Like, you just look at what's happened there. And if that's what this ends up, like, the idea is we need to be more like LSU. No, no one in the country, no one in a healthy sport needs to behave more like LSU has behaved over these past few months. From the way Brian Kelly was fired, to the fight they had with him afterward, to the things that president said, to the things the governor said, to the fact that they went out and signed. I mean, this is a governor who said, that contract was crazy. We're never doing anything like this. And then they went and hired Lane Kiffin. So that part of it, if we're going to have an honest conversation about how to change college football, I'm all for that. I'm not receptive to the idea that, boy, this just shows that Washington needs to be a big boy program. That's stupid to me.
Obviously, tampering to some degree will be at the crux of Washington's investigation into, I guess it's available legal avenues here. The tampering thing does nothing for me, frankly. I think
I agree with you.
That is table stakes. If tampering is the state of play, is there such a thing as tampering? Like, it is against the rules as written, okay, but it's sort of accepted that everybody does it. You can't sign transfers if you don't tamper. That's been the case for years. I mean, coaches and personnel people and agents, I think, started saying, if not with their name attached to it, but at least like on background to reporters years ago, that if you're just learning about a guy entering the portal, he's not coming to your school.
Yeah.
These things happen through back channels, and maybe it's done in a way where it's not like flagrantly in violation of the rules as written, but the fact that, they tampered with someone who signed a contract. I mean, who doesn't? How do you operate? How do you build a college football roster without doing that? Yeah. So it is an egregious case. I'm not suggesting that Husky fans should just be cool with it and like, oh no, it's a Lane Kiffin and LSU. If that's how this ends up going, like it's all good. Don't be mad at them. But to your point, like, it is a little bit of a, hate the game, not the player. With regard to the practice of tampering, everybody tampers.
Yeah, it's why when a guy enters the portal, he never ends up going back. Like, you see the guy that's like, oh, I went out here and there really wasn't anything else out here for me. No, when they go in the portal, they know there's something there for them, or they're being told that what was here for you isn't going to be here anymore.
Now, like, guys do take multiple visits and field multiple offers. Adam Mohammed wound up at Cal. I don't think Adam Mohammed knew he was going to Cal when he went in the portal. Mm-hmm. Guys take multiple, like, look at Sam Levitt is checking out multiple schools. Like, it's not everybody knows the school, but generally speaking, you're going to know your market. You're going to know, hey, here's who might be interested. And okay, then maybe it does take a few days to decide what the destination is going to be. Another piece of this that is already being discussed that it doesn't quite add up to me is that Jedd Fisch and Damon Williams are represented by the same agency.
Yeah.
As are a number of other Husky football players. I know Desmond Roebuck is with Wasserman. I know that John Mills is with Wasserman. I believe Jonah Coleman was with Wasserman. A couple of the incoming transfers they've signed or who have announced commitments. I guess the school hasn't officially announced them. Deshaun Watts, the defensive lineman from Sacramento State, and Colt Dietrich, the offensive tackle from Sam Houston, also represented by Wasserman, which is that's a whole other like subtext to this that's interesting generally. But it's really something doesn't add up with that. It strains credulity to think that Doug Hendrickson, Jedd Fisch's agent, and I guess I don't know for a fact that he is the direct representative on all matters for Damon Williams Jr. It strains credulity to think that he would turn around and in effect do Jedd Fisch like this. So there's some questions that need to be answered there. Something's weird there.
Yeah. So I know Doug a little bit. Doug Hendrickson we're talking about. He was not at Wasserman when I first started covering the NFL. He was at Octagon. Doug represented Marcus Trufant. A number of guys over the years. He was Marshawn Lynch's agent. So I've talked to and know Doug a little bit. I've always had a very good relationship with Doug, and I've never known Doug to tell me something that wasn't the truth. And I wouldn't say that most agents lie, but like he's as straightforward as any agent I've ever dealt with. Like I've always had good dealings with him and felt like he is very straightforward and someone who is trustworthy source. The issue of having coaches and players represented by the same agent, it does happen in the NFL, not nearly as much as it seems to happen in college football. I know last year that there was Brian Kelly and Grant Nussmeier, Brian Kelly at LSU and then Grant Nussmeier had the same agent. It does seem to be, from my perspective, it could potentially be a conflict. I know that agents would say, look, the job is very straightforward. You represent your client's interests, whether that's the client is the coach or the client is a player. I'm not deciding anything. I'm following their guidance. It does seem to be a very fraught situation when you're talking about a college coach and a player, because the player, especially now, has freedom of movement that they do not have in the NFL. Like you can't get drafted by a team and transfer a year later. That the structure of NFL makes it a much more straightforward job than in this situation. If the agent is talking to Damon, is he thinking about how Damon's departure might affect his other client? And I'm sure that I should make it clear, I've not talked to Doug in years. So I don't have any insight from him about this situation specifically. And it very well may be they have all these firewalls built in and this person handles this part of it and we cordon it off. What you just said, though, is like, you look at it and you're like, man, that seems fraught for potential conflicts of interest. And on the other hand, I've also been around situations where players have done things that their agents either told them not to or that the agent didn't know about. And they're like, dude, I had nothing to do with this. And there's a black box here of how exactly that happened. It is very hard for me as someone who has known Doug Hendrickson to reconcile the idea that Damon signed a contract with Washington and then 4 or 5 days later announced that he's going into the transfer portal. Something happened in there that is a monkey wrench, as a curveball. Like that's not how Doug Hendrickson does business.
Yeah, so I on that piece of it in particular, I am very hesitant to jump to any conclusions.
Yeah.
I would leave all possibilities on the table with regard to that one. And rather than draw the straight line to Jed Fish in Washington got done dirty by Jed Fish's agent.
Yeah.
I would leave your mind open to all possibilities on that piece of this.
That seems like maybe the least likely potential course explanation for events of how this transpired.
Like I mentioned earlier, it is possible that Washington comes out of this with a good enough quarterback. This is the Big Ten. The trenches matter. I kind of felt like the news of the day. We joked about the punter, which is, the piece of that too, by the way. I mean, playing hard-nosed Big Ten cold weather football requires having a good punter. I was legitimately
excited about the punt god, Hunter the punter.
But I thought we were going to lead this show talking about, hey, Deshaun Watts was one of the best run defenders on the interior defensive line in all of FCS last year, according to PFF. He's 6'2" and 318 pounds. Good size. Guy you can put in the middle of that D line. And you look at, I think 300 some snaps in 11 games at Sacramento State. So he was not an every down player. Maybe that's something that if you're going to point to, like, hey, concerns or whatever, it's, can he give them more like what Taitai Uyunglele gave them or whatever. That has now a discussion for a different day. But if you get a good enough quarterback and you feel okay about your running game, which I think still requires going out and getting somebody to pair with Brian Bonner and Jordan Washington, and you feel okay about your defense, which is TBD until they get at least one more interior defensive line transfer and probably two, and maybe a corner, and retain Ryan Walters and all those sort of things. Not that that's like a major concern right now, but there's a world where this doesn't cost them like a ton of wins necessarily. But I was having this thought, way before the Damon Williams thing became a thing, about it's easy for someone in my position to say, hey, don't fret over Adam Mohammed going in the portal. Don't fret over your backup center, Zach Henning, going in the portal. Don't fret over Bryce Butler going in the portal until you know what Washington is getting back on the other end, right? All you know when a guy goes in before the portal's actually open and signals his intent, all you know is who you're losing. You don't know who you're getting yet. So wait for it to net out before you make a judgment. And you could give the same advice in this situation with Damon Williams Jr. Wait and see who Washington gets, assuming that they do want to go replace him, take the money that they were going to use to pay him and go get somebody who's sort of a top of market available quarterback right now. I don't think that makes people who are put off by the transfer portal feel all that much better, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think a lot of people, if you were to tell them, hey, don't worry, they'll get Sam Levitt, or don't worry, they'll get, Houston Longstreet is a name to watch, I think, at USC, who's not in the portal, but it's been reported that he's thinking about going in the portal. He's a 5-star quarterback in the 2025 class. If they go out and get someone you feel good about, whose talent you feel good about, if they go out and, if they replace Zach Henning with a similarly situated reserve type offensive lineman, and they do that every year, it's not the replacement of talent that people are focusing on when they talk about like how much they hate all this.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's not what college football is supposed to be. That's not what the NFL is.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to your point, when you draft somebody, you get to see whether they pan out or not. If they're just no good at all, yeah, there's a chance that the team might cut them after a year or two, but probably not. You get their rookie contract with a team option for a 5th year, right? To see how they develop, see how they adapt to the pro level. When an NFL team drafts somebody, like, you get to watch this guy for multiple years, guaranteed. Not totally guaranteed. He could get hurt. They could trade him. Things could still happen, but he can't up and leave, right? And so I think for a lot of people, it's less about, well, hey, don't worry, there are decent replacements available. They have the money to go out and get one. It's more about, no, look, I want to count on watching the same guys year in and year out. I want to, we saw what Damon Williams was as a sophomore. The head coach has been raving about him since the second he got here. I wanted to see what he was going to look like as a junior. I wanted to watch him develop. I wanted to see junior year Damon Williams at Washington. So like, I think there's a certain portion of people who will be plenty appeased if they can get someone who they deem near his talent level or good enough, right? And think, you know what? If that's how Damon Williams Jr. wants to move through the world, good riddance. Let's take the guys who want to be here, and away we go. It's no big loss. Maybe some people will see it that way. I think no matter who they get, and this, we're talking about Damon Williams right now, but this could really apply to any position, any player. No matter who they get, I think the part of this that really puts people off is, I don't care if you're replacing like talent for like talent year in and year out. I don't want to watch different players every year.
Yeah, I 100% echo, and I think it's very well stated, like how you just laid it out, because that describes right now. I feel this sucks. I really liked watching Damon Williams play football first. I liked the style of quarterback he was. I thought it was exciting. I thought it was really fun. I really enjoyed watching him develop as a guy who Jedd Fisch came here with and said, this guy is a player. This guy is a stud. We're going to play him every game as a true freshman because we believe in him. He's going to be our starter. At one point, he told Bruce Feldman that he's the best quarterback at his age that I've ever seen. It was fun to see that come, and I was looking forward to rooting for him next year in a year where Washington is set up to be pretty good. I don't think Washington's season is sunk. And I'm not trying to undersell like, oh, this doesn't really matter. It does matter. And one of the reasons it matters is because it sucks that you can't count on or feel and watch a guy grow like that. And I try to temper that sort of feeling of my fan desire with, hey, it's not wrong for a kid to decide he wants to play somewhere else or decide that he wants a bigger stage or all of those things. But as a sport, I absolutely believe that this is unhealthy. And when you pile this on top of how readily coaches can leave, I don't think it's healthy for the sport to create a situation where everything is so mobile and that you can't count on your coach staying put and you can't count on your best players staying put. And every offseason is going to be a game of musical chairs. And it's the schools that have the biggest war chests they've amassed, whether or not those are revenue share or NIL or third-party collectives, all of that. Like, I don't think it's a good way to run a sport. And I think that there are a lot of really crappy things about the NFL. Like, I think that in terms of how it treats people, how it chews up, but there is a structure to it. And college football needs some structure because at this point there is so little that it is chaotic. And I mean, look, I'm not going to stop watching Husky football and I'm not going to stop rooting for Washington. And I'm very interested to see who the next quarterback is. But the departure of Damon Williams sucks and epitomizes some of the real structural problems in this sport.
It all points back to players need to be employees. They need to have a union. This needs to be collectively. But doesn't everything always point back to that? And look, there are challenges. There are all kinds of landmines associated with that process. It would not be easy. I don't think that even people who have become proponents of it are all that fired up about eventually going through that process. I think that there are reasons why players shouldn't prefer that over the way that things currently are. A lot of them anyway, those at the top of the market, certainly. But it is amazing how the solution to all of what ails college football with regard to the transfer portal, NIL, player movement, poaching, tampering, honoring contracts, all those sorts of things, coaching contracts too, by the way.
Yes.
could be resolved with a collective bargaining agreement similar to that in the NFL. If you are under contract with a team for multiple years and you hate it and you want out and you say, I'm going to leave, no one's going to come to your residence and force you to come put on that team's uniform and play for them, but you're not going to get paid and you're not going to play for anybody else because you signed a contract. You didn't fulfill the terms of the contract. The collective bargaining agreement is very clear, and you don't have other teams trying to interfere in that process either. And if you do, there are consequences. That
court injunctions. If somebody decided a week after signing a contract in free agency, no, I'm really going to go to this other team, there would be a whole arbitration process that's spelled out in the CBA that would prevent that from happening. If this was in the NFL right now, Damon Williams would be required to play for the University of Washington next year. But there's no CBA and players aren't employees. So you have this, he's not technically being paid for his performance, and you can't unwind. So I don't think anybody expects or even really wants at this point him to be forced to, quote, honor his contract. It's just about damages. And yeah, I agree with you. It does ultimately come back to that, because if you have these general guidelines, all these coaches are just willing to screw each other over in order to get the player. Like, yeah, we're going to operate in the charcoal gray area here. Here comes Lane Kiffin smelling like Sex Panther.
I will say, I agree. Like, any legal action, if that is where this is headed, it's going to focus on damages. It's not going to be on, like, the only way, and I'm at this point, I'm not legitimately entertaining this as a possibility. The only way Damon Williams Jr. is Washington's quarterback next year is, if there is a swift 24-hour changing of the mind. I know I had heard, and Ross Dellinger reported on Twitter a little while ago that Washington is meeting with, let me read it correctly here. Washington officials are expected to communicate later today with Damon Williams representatives regarding the situation and next steps. The only way that this ends with Damon Williams Jr. being at Washington is if he, in very short order, says, you know what, I screwed up. I shouldn't have made this decision. I'm going to stay. I don't want this. I don't want this headache. I don't want this mess. Please forgive me, and let's bury this. Which, based on his relationship with Jedd Fisch, if that happened, and I'm not saying this to suggest that I think that is a likely outcome, cannot make that clear enough. Based on his relationship with Jedd Fisch, if that happened, if there were a swift changing of the mind and apology, and I want to be here, I do think that's the only way it could be resolved with Damon Williams Jr. not leaving Washington. That's just me spitballing. I say that more to support your point about how, like, I don't think Washington's pursuit of legal avenues involves trying to make him stay against his will. It would pretty much have to, court is going to order that. Like, yeah, it would pretty much have to involve just pursuing damages. Which, in that, like, if you're the school, then okay, great, you set precedent that you can't. If you're successful in that, I should say, then okay, great, you set precedent that you can't just breach a contract with no consequences, and maybe that helps you going forward. But it's not going to help change the fact that your starting quarterback is going to be playing for somebody else next year. As a fan, you have no reason to care at all. Okay, cool. They got the school got some money in return. That's great, I guess. I wanted the starting quarterback to still be the starting quarterback.
Yeah. I'm sure I could get to the point where I'm willing to say, okay, yeah, like, hey, it's these sort of things happen, and welcome or want Damon Williams to be the starting quarterback for Washington. I don't feel that way right now. I kind of feel like, okay, I learned something very clear about this player, how he feels about the school and his career, and I'm not going to be mad at him personally, at a personal level. But I also am not inclined to cheer for him. I feel differently about him than I did well, is it 12 hours yet? Yeah, it's 12 hours. Certainly 24 hours ago. And that's part of the reality of sort of being a grown up, and you are getting paid now, and it is like it isn't the same situation that it used to be for college athletes. So it's just so crazy, man. Like I try not to be like, oh man, this is the craziest thing that's ever happened. I don't remember anything as a Husky fan that is this big of a shock since Don James retired. And even then, I'm not sure if that would have been him retiring was such a huge shock, but like you knew there were serious issues going on. Like I had the same reaction you did when I saw that last week. I was like, I guess they're announcing this stuff now. I didn't realize that was even something I should have been worried about, him re-signing, and now he's gone.
In case there's any question about how this is being viewed from the Washington side, the Jed Fish side in particular, Amber Fish, Jed Fish's wife, commented on a Barstool Sports post about this. Twitter user Ralph Amsden screenshotted it. Someone just sent it to me, and I did go and looked at the Barstool post. It's a video of Dave Portnoy talking about the state of college football. And I assume this, I haven't listened to it, but it is indeed Amber Fish's account commenting on. It says, announces during a funeral of an athlete at University of Washington how disgusting, well, all of his other teammates were at the funeral.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. I brought this up in a text because my initial reaction is clearly that is an awful and tone deaf sort of decision. But I tried to temper the whole, like, can you believe he did it? Because if he'd posted that after the funeral or memorial, or if he'd done, people were going to be mad at him no matter what he did. And I feel the same way about sort of him signing the paperwork. It's not like signing the paperwork is the reason we'd all be mad and bummed and angry if he did this without having signed anything, if he did this on the up and up the correct way. And I felt the same way. But then when you're talking about it, it does reflect the fact that he posted that during the memorial for Mia does hit different when you think about it being an event for the school's student athletes and for everyone that loved Mia to celebrate her life and what she meant on a team that then went on and had this incredible run in her honor. And the idea that people are at, whether it's the reception for that or whatever it is, whispering about what the most prominent athlete at that school that he's leaving. The fact, like, that really does, it's awful to think about that disruption being caused. Like, just how that must have felt in the moment. It's also, I guess, to me, kind of just reflects a disconnect between him and the student athletes at the school he was going to play. Like, it's lousy. And I don't believe that he intended that. Like, I wouldn't, somebody would have to, I'm not going to assume that was on purpose, or he was like, I just don't care. But he clearly wasn't thinking about it too. And that's pretty telling.
Yeah, it's, you're considered an adult when you turn 18 years old in this country. And I think especially when you are a public figure and a very well compensated already, I mean, before this new deal, a very well compensated public figure, you deserve whatever criticism you get when you do something like that. So I don't think it's my place to levy it necessarily, but I don't think anybody should take any pains to excuse it or defend it.
Yeah, right. Like, or to minimize how that must have felt. Like, I don't think it was malicious, but I also don't think it was malicious when Alex Rodriguez announced he was going to opt out of his contract, or Boris announced that Rodriguez was going to opt out of his contract in the World Series. And everybody's like, what? Why is he doing that now? And that this is obviously even a more personal and sort of significant thing where it's like, well, why did that have to happen now? Why wasn't he cognizant that this was going on? That sort of feeling does make me like, what would you want him back? Could you, if you could unring this bell, would you? And I'm like, kind of like, nah, like we kind of saw what this meant to him, and he has every right to choose what's best for him and himself. And I have every right to feel, and Husky fans have every right to feel that, like, okay, that shows us how much other things actually mattered to him.
Pat Chun was very involved in the House Settlement Implementation Committee. He has been a voice on this to a certain extent nationally. Washington very much made its bet on this era of enforcement. They structured their NIL plan around the new rules, around a good faith assumption that third-party deals needed to be legitimate third-party deals to pass the College Sports Commission scrutiny, that enforcement would rule the day. And now it looks like they are at least willing, again, we'll see how it plays out, but at least willing to be the most high-profile test case of whether these contracts are enforceable and exactly what degree, if any, of liquidated damages a school can recoup if a player breaches that contract, if a court indeed deems him in breach of the contract. So the bet on enforcement, the bet on rules ruling the day, so to speak, always felt fraught. And it still does, perhaps to a greater degree than ever. I don't think that anybody anticipated that it would be Damon Williams Jr. To put them in this position. I think that, there are folks behind the scenes at Washington who decry the level of tampering and poaching attempts from other schools that go on. That's the first assumption and the first worry when someone like Adam Mohammed goes in the portal, when it sure seems like, gosh, he's got everything set up to play a big role and be their starting running back next year, and he's played it perfectly and he's going to get paid. Why would he do this? I think the fact that he wound up at Cal, we don't know what they're paying him. I'm not certain they're maxing out their revenue share. Maybe they are. Tosh Lupoy is obviously a very good recruiter. Maybe he just saw a better opportunity there. Who knows? It does not seem like the kind of place you go to get rich, but who knows? I don't think anyone had in their minds that Damon Williams Jr. would leave Jedd Fisch. I've never heard of a coach who is more publicly supportive and insistent that a quarterback will be a star, will be given maximum resources around him to be a star, who was more willing than Jedd Fisch to talk about Damon Williams Jr. in those terms before he'd started a game.
Yep.
And that's not to suggest that, like, oh my gosh, the worst part of this is that Damon Williams Jr. broke his loyalty to Jedd Fisch. Loyalty's not a thing. We know that, so on and so forth. Like, this is not begging you to cry tears for anybody who might have been betrayed here. But it is a remarkable development based on those facts. I don't know that we've ever seen anything quite like that before. The only way that it becomes more remarkable is if he ends up going to Oregon for some reason. Not that we need to redo that whole conversation from a couple weeks ago, but just stunning.
Yeah, because Carson Beck transferring, but there was already sort of grumbling. I don't know how sad Georgia was to see him leave, and there was. Usually when it's happened, there's already Sam Leavitt. He had Arizona State in the playoffs the year before, but clearly the last season had not gone the way. Dylan Gabriel, there are high profile quarterbacks who have transferred, but it's never been quite like this. It's never been. I don't think you've seen a program as good as Washington is, and you can make all sorts of arguments or debate with me about like where it stands, but this is a school that played for a national championship 2 years ago and whose quarterback was the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy, that loved their quarterback, built the team around him, was compensating him at certainly a very high level, then lose that guy. So yeah, it's pretty stunning.
We'll see where Washington goes from here.
I will say, so we're not leaving it on a downer. If there was one position, well, probably it's the second position. If you said, okay, you're going to lose your best player at position X, and who's Jed going to be able to recruit and get the best guy there? Wide receiver is probably the first one, but quarterback, like there are going to be quarterbacks that really want to play for Jed Fish. Like this is not going to be as destructive as the departure of Kalen DeBoer, not even close. And I can guarantee you in 2 weeks, we're going to have people arguing that this is actually better for Washington.
They've gotten 3 transfers in,
including a punter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Point God.
Top 15, at least nationally in yards per punt. Top 6, I think, in yards per punt among qualifying punters. And then top 15 nationally in hang time among punters with, I set the threshold at like 20 attempts, which is not many.
You research hang time?
Hell yeah. What are we doing here? If they're tracking it, I'm looking it up. Top 15 in hang time, top 15 in number of punts inside the 20. If you're looking at punter metrics, Danny, I don't know what more you could want than what Hunter Green did, not just last year at San Diego State, but before that at Northern Colorado. He was very good. Local kid, UW legacy. He's coming home to finish his college career at the school as his dad played at. And so that's good news for Washington on the personnel side, on the personal side. And they also added an offensive tackle and a defensive tackle. So they had begun to address what I would say were like the most important positions to address. And now they got to go find a quarterback. 2 names I'm focusing on, not to suggest these are the only guys that Washington would check out or that are possible. But right now our Missouri transfer, Bo Pribula, who was, he was kind of the poster boy for, we need to change the college football calendar, because he was Penn State's backup quarterback who had to go in the portal if he was going to leave Penn State and be a starter in 2025, which he wound up doing at Missouri during Penn State's college football playoff run. And so that's the guy who everyone kind of pointed to as like, gosh, look at this, this poor kid had to leave his team in a playoff run. We didn't really want to, but if he wanted to be a starting quarterback, that's the way he had to do it. He's back in the portal. Would not be surprised if Washington looked into him. Again, Houston Longstreet at USC. We'll see if he goes in the portal or not. His brother did, and they're, from what I understand, kind of considered a package deal. So we'll see what he does. That's a West Coast guy, right? That's a Centennial High School product out of Corona, California, that I'm sure the staff is very familiar with. Dylan Raiola's still out there. Sam Levitt's still out there. He's a Northwest guy. Pacific Northwest guy, but it seems like he's got his sights set on that SEC, ACC area right now. Who am I leaving out? There's a couple others. The market is not barren, and look what LSU just did, or maybe did. It's not done. We'll see.
Allegedly.
Maybe someone who's not in the portal yet.
Do you think, this will be the last question I have, is Washington's starting quarterback in 2026 currently in the portal as we speak at 10:47 a.m. on Wednesday, January 7th? Or will he be entering the portal henceforth?
Good question. I'm just going to play the odds and say that he's in the portal right now, but I simply do not know.
I'm going to take that he's not in the portal now.
Covered our bases there.
That's exactly right. Say Who Say Pod has cornered the market on that one. We got that one right, one of us.
We had an Ian question about like the nightmare scenario for him, at least, of Oregon winning a national championship. I think we're gonna push that.
I will say this: Ian's being soft. Like Ian's already like resigned himself to Oregon's gonna win the national title. Dude, there are so many chances for Oregon to mess this up. Now, I was rooting for Alabama. I wanted Alabama to win only because if Alabama won against Indiana, then they could beat Oregon, and then I could tease Oregon fans about Kalen DeBoer being their Dan Lanning's daddy. And that didn't happen, but there are a lot of opportunities for Oregon to mess this up.
We shall see. I kind of forget that there's games still happening, especially with yesterday's news, but we'll talk to you next week, if not sooner. Who the hell knows at this point? I'm not going anywhere. Oh, we'll see you guys.